The role of a leader is to help teams be brilliant. The power lies in everybody else. That's good leadership. The queen doesn't control the beehive. The queen serves the beehive. She's not in charge. The whole organism actually is in charge as one large living thing. I've worked in big corporations for all my career, 25 years. And actually that's an interesting discussion already to have about the role of a CEO.
Is this what you would describe as the Hive model?
Yeah.
Why do you call it that?
I am a beekeeper.
Not about being the leader. It's not about being right. What was the last part?
It's the role of a leader is to help teams be brilliant. Actually, the power lies in everybody else. That's good leadership.
So how does a leader effectively take that stance with their team as opposed to the stereotypical thought of what leadership means, which is, right, pointing a direction, saying, follow me, and I know the best way to achieve the mission, achieve the freedom, whatever it is. Help me understand that.
So let's just go back. Let's rewind a moment to the
Sure.
Industrial Revolution and when all these big companies were formed. The world was a lot simpler. And you did have subject matter experts who knew more than everybody else. And that's why we had a pyramid hierarchy with people at the top who knew more than everyone else. And they got paid to know more, and they got paid to be the experts, and they got paid to take the big decisions. Now, in all the work we do today, the world is changing, and the world is more complicated. And we don't know what the future is. We don't know. The past that we knew doesn't inform the future. Everything is changing. And what we need is leaders who are curious and interested and humble and questioning. What do we need to do? How can we pull things together? How do we get the best out of everybody's skills? So it's far more being a team. It's far more a model of team leadership than being an individual leader.
Is this what you would describe as the Hive model?
Yeah.
Why do you call it that?
I am a beekeeper. I'm going to just tell you a quick story, and for the listeners,
Please.
for context as well. I've worked in big corporations for all my career, 25 years, 100,000 people, etc. Big pharmaceutical companies. And in my spare time, I became a beekeeper. And I thought beekeeping was a hobby, nothing to do with work. It was something to take my head and my heart and my brain and my body away from work at weekends. And I very quickly noticed the very busy workings of a hive is like the busy workings of organizations. And bees are noisy, and there's communication, and there's an amazing product, and it's difficult to see what's going on to the untrained eye. And everywhere I started to look, I noticed parallels to complex business life today. And then that has informed my whole inquiry, and leading to a book we're going to talk about called Be Wise. And also it's that approach. There is no one leader in charge. It's not all about repeating what we've done in the past. It's about being open-minded to what we need to do differently right now.
That's interesting. I've already got a million questions circulating in my head, and I'm trying to figure out where to start. So I want to start by understanding what led you to beekeeping. So how did you get there? You said you've been doing it for about 15 years now. We were talking before the show. How did you go from this corporate environment to even seeking beekeeping as a hobby?
Yeah, and I'm smiling because I kind of realized I'm kind of drawn to big, complex problems. I can't help it. I'm the kind of person, if you see a ball of string that's all knotted, I can't help but undo it and work it out. And I wish my life would be simpler. I found, look, honey is awesome. but actually the way honey is made and how the bees take decisions and how the bees communicate and how the bees organize themselves and how the bees run this amazing career path where they do 7 different jobs, it blew my mind. And the more I learned, the more I studied, the more I observed, the more it blew my mind and allowed me to think better about complex organizations at work. It's a fascinating topic.
That is interesting. What an incredible angle to take on that. That's not what I was expecting. Okay, so and something I read, I don't remember which article it was, but it mentioned that it was around curiosity, right? And it said something like you trace your curiosity to childhood jars of honey from your great uncle. Is that right?
Yes,
So your experience, there's some kind of association with bees that goes further back than even when you started beekeeping. So talk to me a little about that.
Do you know what, Josh? As I talk about bees and organizations a lot, everyone has a bee story. It's such, it might be childhood, it might be tasting honey on toast, or it might be being scared or stung by bees, but everyone has an emotional relationship with bees, normally positive. You see kids sometimes just watching a bee on a flower, and the story of how they got there is amazing. Just here's a hook for you. When you see a bee flying, that's the last 3 days of its life. It only flies for the end of its life, and before then, it has done 7 different jobs inside the hive. All of these little things to learn about. It's absolutely gobsmacking.
I had no idea that if I saw a bee flying, that was within the last 3 days of its life. That's incredible.
That's the last job they do. And before then, they've been really busy inside the hive. Flying is the last job they do, and then that's the end of their lifespan.
That is interesting, and we're gonna get to that. I wanna talk a little more on this Hive model, right, and how it compares to this. I think I read it was called a hero CEO mentality or narrative, which I think is kind of what you were alluding to when you said, it's not about being the best. It's not about being, the person in charge. So how can this? Obviously, this is not a mainstream way of working for humans yet. For bees, obviously, it is. But why isn't it mainstream if it's that much better than what we see today? Or am I not looking at that correctly?
Yeah, this is a really interesting reflection. I'm 54, okay? And I spent a long time working when my role models were people who at least looked like they knew more than I did. And there is a whole hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of command and control in organizations. Mm-hmm. And my role model, when I was starting out in my career, my role models were mostly alpha men who knew or pretended they knew more than I did. And that was a model and it was a structure. And I fitted into a place. Now, the world has changed, actually. Let's look at AI, let's look at technology, let's look at social media, let's look at the way products are invented and developed and sold and marketed. We've got to open up. We can't just rely on one person at the top to know everything. We need to be really smart. We need to hire brilliant people. And then leadership is about letting those people be brilliant. And that's a massive, massive change. It's a massive different way of thinking. And it can be, there's lots of emotion in here. Actually, this change of thinking can be threatening. It can be intimidating. It can be exciting. It can be scary. But let's open up to all of these emotions and think harder about how we're going to add value.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the concept. Can you help me and my audience kind of visualize what this might look like from a hierarchy perspective before we get into, roles, responsibilities, stuff like that, how it can help a business? What does it look like from a hierarchy perspective if, the leader isn't necessarily the leader? Is that, am I to understand that's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, yes, Josh, it could be. The the old hierarchy model, and it's great. It's a great model. It's served us well for 150 years. It's been a very good model until now, and it was about certainty, and it was about command and control, and controlling uncertainty. If a bit like a pyramid. If the outside world is chaotic, you need to bring it into your pyramid and control it, and that's how we dealt with complexity. But actually now, even the most massive organizations don't have all the answers. We actually need to look to different sources for research, for data, for insights, for innovation. We need to partner with universities, with students, with different customer groups. We don't have all the answers anymore inside our organization. We need to open our eyes and open our arms and look for ideas and innovation and competitive advantage from outside of our organization.
Yeah, I like that a lot. What's the risk from an accountability standpoint? Because I think that the way that I'm looking at it, and I won't put words in my audience's mouth, but I'm trying to kind of see how they may be thinking about this too. And they might be worried about a lack of accountability, which is one of the other reasons why we have the typical hierarchy that we have: CEO, COO, and then all the way down the line. How do we keep that accountability where it needs to be to keep everybody moving in the same direction?
Yeah, Josh, you've hit on you've hit on a really important question here. Individuals and teams need to be trusted and feel safe and be accountable for what they do. And they need to be able to speak up and speak out and have differences of opinions, and we need to disagree. So there's a lot of things going on here. If we go back to the old model, you tell someone what to do and they do it. And if they don't do it, it's a performance problem. If they do it a little bit better than you thought, they might get a bonus. That's easy. Actually, that's the easy way of working, to be honest. And we keep doing the same thing again and again. And it's like a machine. It's like a mechanism. The work we do with clients is more about looking at organizations as a living organism. And accountability is absolutely key. People need to know where the boundaries are and what they can comment on and how they can step up. And actually, a leader also needs to be open-minded and allow people to make a better contribution than they would have done if they were in the box just doing what they were told.
I see. So a level of autonomy creates ownership and accountability.
Yes, and it requires some emotional maturity.
Okay.
Actually, it requires emotional maturity of the leader and the team members, and also HR. The structures we're going to use, the way we hire people, the way we pay people, the way we incentivize people. It actually all needs to be a very mature and more modern way of working.
So how would we, and who finds these people, that check all these boxes? They need to be trusted, accountable, emotionally mature. I think there was one more: safe. They need to feel safe, right? And so how is that? I mean, is there certain interview processes? Is there certain personality tests? Like, how do we make sure we're bringing on the right people?
And just the first thing is actually making sure that the culture in the organization supports those behaviors. Because actually what you've just described, that list, it's actually how everyone wants to be. Most people want to be, give me a bit of respect, give me some space, trust me to do what I do, allow me to bring in good ideas. Let's also disagree. So we need the right culture and the right mechanisms. And then actually, technically, in terms of hiring, in the past, there have been some very rigid, strict ways of interviewing. Well, actually, look, this is about human relationships. So let's get people into the business for a day. Let's get people to work on a project. Let's get a team to have an input as to our hiring decision for their team members. Make them all go out for lunch together. At a human level, that's what we're talking about. And I don't want to hire people because they look good in a suit on the day and have all the textbook answers. That's exactly not who I'm looking for. I want real people to bring their best selves to work.
Yeah. No, I love that. And culture, I think, it's one of these no pun intended buzzwords, right? That that we hear. And but I am curious now to try to kind of move this into a place where what can we learn from the bees and what you do to help us build the culture of our organization? You already touched on the decentralization, deregulation of the leadership, but what else is there?
Josh, I'm going to pick up on three things, I think, three different things.
Great.
The first is actually just the kind of the mental model. So let's talk about the bees first of all, and that's how the book works. Every chapter starts talking about the bees, and then it rolls into the work inside. So there is a chapter on organizational design. And in the old days, the Victorian scientists, they thought a beehive was run a bit like Queen Victoria at the top. So they thought the queen bee was the queen at the top, and the queen controlled everything, actually just like Queen Victoria. And that was a very popular model. Now, it was quite a shock to them to realise it's actually upside down. So the queen doesn't control the beehive. The queen serves the beehive. So she lays the eggs and she regulates it and she has the pheromones. But she's not in charge. The whole organism actually is in charge as one large living thing. The queen is not at the top as the boss. The queen is underneath, serving the organisation. And actually, that's an interesting discussion already to have about the role of a CEO. Is the CEO at the top controlling everything, or is the CEO in the middle setting the atmosphere and setting the right culture, or is the CEO at the bottom actually serving the organisation to make sure they've got the resources that they need to do things they do best? And I'm not saying we don't learn exactly from the bees, but if it helps us have better conversations, that is already helpful.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so that's the first one. Before you get into the second one, I just want to clarify here. So in the structure, the idea of having leadership kind of dispersed, there is still a CEO or somebody, a figurehead at the helm of the organization. It's just how they behave within the organization that you're speaking to.
Yeah, and you do need a CEO. Of course you do. Of course, for external relations, you do need a CEO. But let's not assume that the CEO is at the very pinnacle and controls everything. And the CEO can't know everything. The CEO has a large team of people, and use those people well. Use them fast. Use them flexibly. Empower them. Make them keen. Get them solving the problems that the business needs to solve.
So in the spirit of that, would you be an advocate for the team collectively agreeing or disagreeing whether or not that CEO should be CEO?
My goal is to make people have better quality conversations. So I can't answer that. I'm not going to answer that question. But to have a good question about who is the right person to lead something is really important.
Yeah.
It might not be the CEO, to be honest, but who is the right person to lead a project? Who is the right person to speak to customers? Who is the right? And it might not be the traditional person with that title. Just because they've got the title doesn't mean they're the best person to do something. Really, let's tune in to the skills in the organization and let's challenge an old-fashioned model.
Fair enough. You can still operate a meritocracy, by that way. Absolutely.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Very good. Okay, good. So number one was organizational design. What's number two?
Number two is my background. It's communication. And if you have a large organization, I'm just constantly amazed at how inefficient or ineffective some of the communication is. And let's look at what the bees do. When a bee, so there's 50,000 bees in a hive, and I've said that the ones that are foraging for flowers, if they find a beautiful source of pollen, such as an apple tree on a lovely March spring day with all these millions of white flowers, the bee comes back and it tries to convince 50,000 bees that that's the place to go, and they come back. And the guy that worked this out got a Nobel Prize, and he worked out that the bees communicate by a thing called a waggle dance. Have you heard about this?
Not at
So
all.
it's in the book, but the simple version is absolutely genius. Don't forget, the bees can't talk, yet they've got to communicate to 50,000 bees. And they do a dance in the shape of a figure of eight. And the central line of the figure eight is the degree, is the angle from the sun. So that tells the bees which direction. Okay, so you know where to go, but you don't know how far to go. And then how energetically the bees tell the story actually says it's close or it's a little bit further. And then, in addition, the bees come back covered in pollen. So you can see, and the bees are excited, and they've got great big pollen sacs on their legs, which you may have seen, and they're covered in pollen, and they have like this electrical charge of excitement. And one bee comes back and delivers its message. And then another bee goes, that's interesting, I'm going to go and have a look. And it comes back and it tells the same message. And another bee goes to look and it comes back and goes, do you know what? Those two guys were right. And it carries on. And the lesson here is twofold. The first thing is this is all a bit fun, but this communication happens in the dark. Inside a beehive, it's dark. And the guy that won the Nobel Prize didn't include this bit. And the bees communicate the same message with energy, with clarity, with commitment to the whole hive. And they say it with consistency again and again and again until the bees understand. Now, let's play with this and have some fun. In work, it can sometimes feel like being in the dark, surrounded by 50,000 noisy people, all making noise, and you don't know what's going on, and how many emails, and how many Telegram messages, and how many WhatsApp messages, and there's the intranet site, and oh my God, there's a town hall meeting. It's just overwhelming. And in an organization with large numbers of people, we need to be clear and consistent and committed to a message to make sure the message is received and understood. And repeat the message, and repeat the message, and repeat the message, and then get other people to tell the message for you. That's the key thing. If you're making a big change in an organization or something's going on, don't just hear it from the communications head. You need to work the system, get ambassadors, get other people, get people to come back and tell the message in their own words, and use that energy and use that passion. But the simple message is pay attention to your messaging.
All right. I've got questions.
Bring on, Josh.
This is incredible. Not only is my company logo a hexagon, but the first value in my company is communicate relentlessly. And because I've noticed the impact that it has on the organization, internally, externally, all of that. And I think, first of all, I didn't know any of this about bees, and this is incredible information. And there has to be some sort of level of intelligence that bees have that I was completely ignorant to for a very long time. Just in this short conversation that we're having, I'm beginning to realize, that they are they're a lot more complex, right, than I thought that they were. So that is really cool. Also, waggle dance is probably the best term I've ever heard to describe anything that communicates. So clear, consistent, committed to the message. So I often say to my team or my leadership team, that the team has to hear something at least 7 times in order for them to retain it.
Yeah.
How can we, as leaders, ensure that our message remains clear, consistent, and committed the same way that the bee does? I mean, is this just repetition? Is it how it's delivered? Help me and help our audience kind of workshop this into something that they can take into their business today or tomorrow and start changing the way they communicate.
Yeah, and we are all in the business of communicating. That's what we do in organisations, and we use that to change behaviour. And the old model is as a machine; it's a mechanistic. So we've told them, we've ticked this box, we've done a town hall, we've done a Q&A, we've done a newsletter, we've done a press release. I would turn that all upside down, and I would say, has our message been received? So it might have been transmitted, but it might not have been received. And actually, this is common sense, but you need to speak, and you need to listen. Actually, you need to listen to what people are saying. And in an organization, it's a living, organic system. Some people get it, some people don't. Some take a bit longer to understand, and some don't. And some are ambassadors and will spread the message for you. And some people are resistant to any change or communication, and they're going to fold their arms and they're going to close their ears. But you might not see that. Folding your arms is a physical thing and you can see it. Or people just might emotionally close down. And good leaders tune in to sense the system. What is happening? Who is saying what? That is a superior skill of leadership. Sensing the system.
Sensing the system. So a form of emotional intelligence, I would imagine, is what you're speaking to. I read a quote by you that says, the quality of our attention determines the quality of another person's thinking. Now, this was in one of the articles that I had read, and now I'm starting to relate that back to kind of what you're talking about here. So there's a couple of different forms of communication, as I'm hearing from you. It's what we say, it's how we say it, and it's what we hear, right? You mentioned listening. What's the most important part of communication from that aspect, whether it's in business or personal or anywhere else?
I started my career working in sales, and I just had a lovely boss who said, Philip, you've got one mouth and two ears. And actually, fast forward a number of decades, actually it is emotional skills, listening, noticing, observing, sensing, being curious, being open-minded. Actually, these are the leadership superpowers. And with that, one of the things that, I do lots of keynote speaking, which is actually, we have fun with this and the bees. It's talking about leadership and how, very simply, that quote you used, the quality of your attention defines the quality of the other person's thinking. If you're in a business that requires your team to think, pay them attention and let them think. That in those thoughts is your competitive advantage. Can I tell you another bee story about
Please.
About sensing the system?
Yes.
Here goes then. Imagine a beautiful flower meadow on a summer's day, and in the middle of the meadow is a beehive. The box that you might have seen, a square box with a roof on it with some kind of towers, and that's your beehive. Now, as a beekeeper, as you walk up to the hive, first thing to do is to listen. So, you may have to do, you may be going to harvest honey. You may need to take the lid off and open it up and take the honey out. But before you do anything, just pause and listen. Because on a beautiful day with a blue sky, there might be a storm coming. And if there's a thunderstorm coming, the atmospheric pressure changes, and we will see a blue sky before the clouds form. The bees can feel the atmospheric pressure change, and they are stressed. And the noise they make goes up an octave. So just by listening to the buzz, you can tell if they are stressed or not. If they're stressed, don't put your hands in. And if an organization is stressed, don't introduce a new operating procedure. Just tune in. And then the second thing is, so that's using your ears. The next thing is using your nose. Now, again, I'm not saying this is exactly like work, but it just makes you think. When you get a bit close to the hive, you can smell if they're making honey. If they're making honey, they're happy. You can put your hands in, you don't need gloves, they're fine. The bees are not stressed. If the bees are stressed, for different reasons, including a storm coming, if they're stressed, they stop making honey and they make bee glue called propolis. And that's a really bitter, you can buy it in the pharmacy for some reason. It's a really bitter glue that is used to protect the hive. And if the bees are stressed, they go into panic mode and they secure the inside of the hive. But you can smell it. If you can smell propolis, don't put your hands in. They're going to be angry. So there we are. We've got ears. We've got ears. We've got your nose. And the next one is just to observe. As you get a little bit closer, just look. If the bees are flowing and moving and they're coming and going, they all move. Bees move smoothly. They're happy. That's working fine. If bees are stressed, it's staccato. It's very kind of spiky movements. They're stressed. The bees are stressed. If the bees are stressed, don't take the lid off. It's simple. So, and actually at work, in order not to get stung at work, just tune in to what is happening. There we are. That's a key chapter in the book.
I really like that because this being able to associate some of this behavior to bees, I think provides this structure of a framework for people to remember, right? Which is kind of what gets me, if I'm being honest, Philip, sometimes is like, I learn all this stuff. I'm a perpetual learner. I read, I watch, I listen, I learn as much as I can. Remembering it and then recalling it when I need it is the problem, right?
I hear you, Josh. I hear you.
So I really love that you've taken these important lessons and you've tied them to stories, memorable stories that relate to something that does the same thing in the bees with the beehives. And I think that's incredible. And so what I took away from that is pay attention, right? Pay attention to your team, pay attention to your company, and use that as a guide to determine what you should introduce and when, or what you should say and maybe what you shouldn't at the time that it needs to be said. So attention equals timing in a leader's eyes.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So we've got organizational design, number 1. We've got communication, number 2. What's number 3?
And that was it. Sensing the system.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Yeah. Tune in to what is happening in the system. And that includes the system of your immediate team or a department or the whole organization, or actually the political system or the economic system, or what's happening with your customers and your suppliers and your providers. Pay more attention to understanding the system so that you don't get stung.
Makes sense. Or if you're anything like me, completely tune out the political system.
Yeah, that's also a policy. I hear you.
Sorry. Okay, so I've got, I want to shift gears just a little bit here. I've got one more question kind of on the business side of things. Then I want to move into maybe some of the personal side, how we can relate some of this stuff to help us grow and become better leaders, better husbands, better fathers, wives, sisters, etc. So I read somewhere, I think it was in one of the Observer articles, said it led me to a question I wanted to ask about evolution of roles. And I don't remember exactly what was said or where I said it, but you mentioned something about bees evolving roles throughout their lives.
Yeah,
you know where I'm going with this? So I want to know what the leadership lesson is here for human career paths as it relates to the evolution of roles.
And thanks, Josh. This is bonkers, as we say in Europe. This is a crazy. So I talked about, just again, I'm going to tell you a story about the bees, and then let's bring that back to our own career planning and organizations. When a bee hatches out of its little egg, it becomes a larvae, and then it forms a full bee and it hatches. It does one job. It is trained by the bees that hatched actually a few days before to become a nurse. And they nurse the other larvae. and they feed them and they look after them and they care for them and make sure everyone's happy.
This happens right when they hatch?
Yeah, yeah. So that's their first job, to look after the larvae coming through that are about to hatch. And that's a nursing job. And they are trained to do that by the previous bees, and they do that exclusively for 3 to 4 days. And then more bees have hatched, and by that point, they are the experts. And they take time to train the next bees to do the job that they have just been doing. It's beautiful. And then they become trained to do the completely different next job, and their second job is to be a builder. And to be a builder, you need completely different skills to be a nurse. And as a builder, they build the beautiful hexagonal cells, like your company logo, those beautiful, perfect cells. They're all identical, and they're all angled at 6 degrees from the horizontal, so the wet honey doesn't run out. Everything about it is beautiful. But they build for 3 to 4 days, and then they train the bees that have just been nurses to be builders, and then they get trained to do the next job, which is feeding the queen. And they feed the queen, and they look after the queen. So we're going to carry on, and they get closer. They're completely inside the dark in the hive, and then they become a security guard at the front of the hive. And that's the first time they're at the front of the hive in daylight, welcoming in the bees back that are foraging. And then their last job is to fly and pollinate the flowers and collect the nectar and to come home and make honey. And that's the last job they do. Now, let's just pause a moment. It all works great. So each bee has done all the jobs. If the bee, say a bear comes and knocks the hive over or damages the tree or something, all of the bees have got all of the skills they need, and 50,000 bees can reallocate to be builders because they've all been builders and they all know how to build. Or 50,000 bees can be involved in security and fight the bee. So all the bees have the skills and the agility to do what they need to do. Now, if I'm just going to bring this back to work, my lesson at work, now look, that's not how we work, but my lesson at work is 3 things. First of all, when you're doing your job, be good at it. Work hard, be brilliant, and concentrate 100% on the job that you're doing at the time. And take time to mentor other people. Take time to train people, take time to mentor people, take time to share your knowledge and share your experience. And keep thinking about what your next job is going to be. So don't just work in your job. Keep your head above the horizon and keep thinking and keep noticing where are skills needed, what other jobs are there, what things could I do? Because the world has changed and we don't just follow an old-fashioned career ladder anymore. They very rarely exist anymore. And in the future, we don't know what the future jobs are. But by God, there's a chance to keep learning valuable skills each time. Each job, learn skills, keep learning new skills, keep moving, keep mentoring, keep investing. Don't just rely on, I've done this job for 3 years, I'll do the next, go up the ladder, I'll become senior, and then I'll become more senior, and then I'll become a vice president. That doesn't happen anymore. The world has changed. Keep learning, keep moving. It's great.
Wow. I really love that. And it's almost just a fundamental framework for that. Be good at your job, mentor others, and keep thinking about your next job. Yeah. That's really great. So in the bee community, do all the bees go through that process? Do all the bees, each one that's born, do all of them go through that?
Oh God, I'm going to go into one more bee thing.
Please.
So in a beehive, 95% of the bees are hardworking female worker bees. So the female worker bees do exactly as I've just described. They work non-stop, they do all the skills, they have all the capabilities. Then there is one queen bee, and her only job is to lay eggs. That's the queen bee. And then do the math, there are 5% left, and they are male bees. And do you want to hear what male bees do?
Yes, I do.
First of all, the male bees are called drones. They've got big, bulky eyes, and they've got big, heavy wings. And they make a droning noise. So again, if you listen, you can hear a male bee because it makes a big, deeper noise than a hard-working female bee. And the male bees, their only job is to have sex with a queen. That's it. And Josh, and look, it gets crazier. They can't even feed themselves. Okay, so they can't sting, they can't pollinate, they can't make honey, they can't do anything apart from have sex. Now that's important at the beginning of the year. So in spring, when the queens are growing and it's that growth phase, the males have actually an important job. When we get to autumn, the male bees are not needed, and they have no other skills. They can't build, they can't nurse, they can't sting, they can't fly properly, they can't do anything.
I see where this is going, Philip.
It gets harsh. It's harsh. The female bees starve them to death. If it's really bad, if times are hard, the female bees sting them to death, and they push the dead bodies out the front door to feed the birds. But look, let's be crazy and have some fun with this. It's not just about males and females, but it's about making sure that you've got skills that are not, don't rest on your laurels. Keep learning new skills. Keep moving. Keep growing. Keep developing. Don't stick with your old skills. Don't sell typewriters when people have got iPads. The male bees don't have any other skills. And come August, September, they're for the chop. That's it. They get killed. They get murdered. It's homicide.
This is wildly interesting. So I think this is a good turning point once we talk about the male bees having sex with the queen and then dying, to move this into a personal direction. I do have one question about bees, though, and this is something I just wondered since I started talking to you. How does a queen bee become a queen bee?
Oh, Josh, this is brilliant. First of all, a queen bee is about 2.5 times the size, 2.5 times bigger than a normal female bee. And actually, she can't feed herself. There's lots of things she can't do. She's just basically a massive egg-laying machine, hugely adaptive. But she can't live by herself. She can't feed herself. So she performs a very, very specific task. Now, the hive, as a single organism, the hive decides when the queen is getting weak. So the queen has her kind of fertile power for about 2 to 3 to 4 years. At the end of that life, the bees feel and sense that queen is losing her power. And they make a new queen by feeding a regular female egg with a special pheromone called royal jelly. Have you heard of royal jelly?
Never.
Again,
Nope.
You can buy it in the pharmacy for some reason. God knows why you take it. But royal jelly, it's a very, very powerful pheromone. It's actually a hormone that the female bees produce, and they feed a regular egg, and it turns. It's like crazy. It turns from a regular bee into a queen that is 2.5 times bigger and has all these special powers. When sometimes you get 2 queens, or an old one and a new one, and then they actually have to fight, and then one bee will leave, and that's called a bee swarm, which is a whole different story. But does that answer your question about where a queen comes from?
Yeah, no, it does. That's wild. I cannot wait to read your book. I'm very, very excited about that.
Look, at this time of night, the sex bit comes from the virgin queen flies only once, and she leaves her hive. So the virgin queen, the virgin queen, leaves the hive, and she flies in a small circle around the hive, and it's called her honeymoon flight. And that's where the phrase honeymoon comes from. And she flies around, and she is mated, or the male bees from her own hive and male bees from nearby hives fight and compete to mate with the queen. And the queen is only mated with once, and then she then can lay 1,000 eggs a day for her life of 3 to 4 years from that one honeymoon flight.
Whoa.
It's bonkers. Josh, it is
Okay.
bonkers.
Wow. No, this is crazy. I'm you're getting me really excited about bees, Philip. I've never been this excited about bees in my life. No, this is great. All right, let's shift gears into a little bit more personal side of this. You know, the title of this show, the subtitle of this show is The Truth About business leadership and becoming who you're meant to be, right? We talk about this stuff within business, but then also what it takes to be the person to support it, right? And so we've talked a lot about some very professional mannerisms and behaviors that CEOs should exhibit, right? Leaders within the organization should exhibit. But let's kind of soften this a little bit. I talked briefly about what I read. You know, we touched on the curiosity, about how you can trace your curiosity to childhood jars of honey from your great uncle. So I'm curious how that can help people in their lives grow into the person that they're meant to be. You understand the question?
And this is a great philosophical question, actually. It's about what are we doing here on this earth? Let's take it big.
Yeah.
You know, who are we and who are we meant to be? And all the work we do in terms of training organizations and coaching leaders is actually about helping people be more themselves at work and with more skill. And I think what we've found, or what we see every day, is we see people trying to be someone they're not. And we see a great leader trying to pretend to be the leader they think they need to be. Or, you know, let me give you an example. You know, there might be someone in charge of a new department and they think that they need to know all the answers because that's what they learned when they were growing up, and that's what they learned in other companies, and that's what they learned in other hierarchical command and control organizations. So as soon as you're promoted to the next team level, no one's taught you to be a better leader, you know, and you just think you need to be better and know more. And that's just not true. It's not possible. You can't know everything. So we need leaders we need leaders to be good humans and to be themselves, but with a little bit more skill. And that might mean asking better questions. It might mean listening more. It might mean tuning into the system. It might mean, actually, let's not react and panic. Let's slow down and look at what is happening, like sensing the system. And we need leaders to be good people and to be more human and be more who they are. That's why diversity is so important. Be who you are. You can't be someone else. Your head will explode. And actually, that's what we see in nervous breakdown and burnout. You know, you can't be someone else. It's too difficult. Be yourself, and be yourself with better skill, more awareness about yourself, more awareness about the system. And it's a big ask. This is hard. Leading is hard. But it starts with not pretending to be someone else, or not pretending to be who you think you're meant to be because that's what you've seen elsewhere.
So what would you say to someone who feels like asking too many questions is a sign of weakness, a sign that maybe they'll be viewed as incompetent because they don't know the answer?
That's a good challenge. And I think, you know, there are no stupid questions. But actually, you need to create an environment where it's safe to ask questions. And as a leader, you need to role model curiosity. You know, I'm curious, tell me more. How would that work? I'm interested. You know, how a leader role models being curious is really important, and how their leader and how their leader. And then we come back to culture. You know, like your organization, you know, we do need to have a team of people who are empowered to think better, to ask better questions, to be, you know, relentless in continuing to understand the industry. And it's changed. Life has changed. Let's embrace this learning and spirit of newness. If you're tense and you try and control things and hold things together, nothing. That's when you get angry, and that's when people shout, and that's when, look, I'm just doing it with my hands and I'm feeling it. You know, when you're when you're trying to control everything, that's you're just going to burn out, and that's what we see a lot. And then people leave, and then the good people leave an organization, and that's when the culture goes, and you just begin to slide. And like the male bees, perhaps you just lose your relevance. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. How would you respond to the phrase that burnout isn't a function of hours worked, it's a function of alignment?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've seen
actually,
that somewhere.
absolutely. And if you turn that around, high performance is not a function of hours either.
Oh, yeah.
You know, our competitive advantage does not come from working harder doing the same stuff. Whether individually or as a whole business, our competitive advantage is actually thinking better about the bigger problems. If I press this, what comes out of here? What are our customers saying? What are our competitors doing? What else is going on? Where else should we be looking? If I'm Kodak, why am I still making film? All of these big questions that were not asked. And then it's fun. Roll with it. Roll with it. You can't be wrong. Just be open.
I like that. I like that mindset. I want to ask another question here as we move more into the personal side of things. What's a truth, Philip, that took you years to fully accept for yourself, but once you did, it changed the way that you lived and led?
On this journey, I've become a real advocate and believer in coaching skills. And I don't want everyone to be coaches, but I want every leader and everyone at work to have better coaching mindset and skills. Because the truth that I've learned is, as a leader, I don't have to be right. And to be honest, for 15 years at work, I thought, I got a new job as the new leader. I thought I needed to be right. And then I got promoted, and then I was the new leader, and then I had to be right. And oh my God, it was hard work, and I wasn't right, and I didn't know the best, and I was repeating old patterns, and this whole tension, and I was working against myself. And actually, as soon as I learned the power of coaching skills and gained the confidence in asking for help, asking other people, noticing what's happening, crowdsourcing, listening, discovering, being curious, all of a sudden I relaxed. And I became a far better leader and got promoted far quicker. And what I was being was a good people leader. I couldn't, the world was changing so quickly, I couldn't control anything at all. What I could do was control the environment for my people to be brilliant.
So help me understand, maybe if you could break down like the three most impactful coaching skills you had to learn.
I mean, the three, basic core coaching skills. First one is listen better. And actually, that comes to your quote that you did earlier about attention. Pay attention. You might only have 2 minutes, but 2 minutes can be beautifully powerful. Put your phone down, put your notebook away, just pay attention to someone. Really listen to what they are saying and doing and feeling and thinking. Because in there is the magic. You've hired this person to be great, let them be great. So the first one is that listening. The second one is therefore ask better questions. And really asking the better questions. There might be very simple questions. It might be very simple. What else? What else is on your mind? Is the most powerful question to open up the dialogue. Who else should we ask? What else should we consider? What fears have you got? What's holding you back? What can I do to remove a roadblock? We teach people to ask questions because you've never been taught to ask questions, and that's what we do at work, the work we do. So it's listening, it's questions, and then the third thing actually is have this framework, this, have a curious mental model. What could be different? What else needs doing? I have a hypothesis. It might not be right. If I were to do it the old way, I would do this. What else could we consider? So it's having the curiosity mindset. That's the third thing.
Well, I appreciate that. And this ask better questions is really intriguing to me as a podcaster, obviously, number one. Funny story, I started the podcast not only, for the mission that I wanted to embark on, but also to help challenge me to ask better questions. It was a long journey for me from a yes or no questions all the time, or God forbid, just statements, do this, do that, right? To getting curious and stepping into that mindset. But, I like that you brought up this coaching aspect when I asked you about this truth, because it's something that I've experienced as well, just in the answers that I get, the awareness that that's achieved by me asking these questions, and what that does for me, and how that helps my responses with people, not only a business, but personally too, which is kind of what I want to ask you next. Obviously it's important to be a coach at work, but why is it important to be, or is it important to be a coach outside of work?
Yeah, Josh, and you're doing great with your questions, by the way.
Thank you.
And look, it's opening up all sorts of things, isn't it? So look, the book, I'm holding it up. The book is called Be Wise, 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Beehive. And it started off being written as a leadership book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about leadership. It's about life. It's actually about being, using these skills to pay more attention at home, to ask better questions of your friends, to listen more when you're out and about. We are all leaders at work, leaders at home, we're all humans the world needs good people in society. And actually, if you're a volunteer on a committee, or if you're a coach of Little League or a sports thing, or a volunteer, or around the family dinner table, having a chat with your daughter, listen. Listen to what she has. People say teenagers don't talk. Oh my God, they do. Oh my God, they do. Oh my God, they have a lot to say. But you actually need to listen to them. So the book started off as a leadership book. It's about life.
Well, I think that's an important distinction, Philip, too, because when you talk about leadership, our minds, especially maybe the listeners of this show, the readers of your book, we gravitate towards business, right? And we automatically associate that with what we can do with our company, with our team, how we can achieve success, all this kind of stuff. But true leadership really extends far beyond the workplace, right? It's, in my eyes, it's a way of carrying yourself. It's a way of being, authentically and 100% you, no matter where you are and where you are required to show up. So I appreciate, that making sure that, we associate those lessons in the book with more than just business.
Josh, thank you. And that brings it back to be yourself. Be yourself. Be yourself with a little bit more skill. And the little bit more skill might be asking better questions and just listening a little bit better. And maybe you have assumptions. Put them to one side. Or even say that. I have a thought. I have an assumption. I have a hypothesis. What else before we do it, before I tell you to do it, what else could we consider? And I find actually I've got 4 kids. I've got 4 teenagers. As it's improved the quality of my conversations with my daughter in particular enormously, and it's become a joy and it's become fun.
Are these coaching skills that you're exhibiting with your family, your kids, are you seeing these transfer to them in the way that they interact with others, how they carry themselves, or is it still too early to tell?
Well, look, life, I mean, I guess as a parent and a leader, is actually about role modeling. It's about role
Mm.
modeling good behavior as well. I'm also just going to be honest and say, if the family think I'm coaching them like I do at work, I just get kicked off the table. So you just need to be yourself with a little bit more skill. Um, you know, So yes, I do need to just think a bit harder. Actually, what is it like for my daughter? As a teenager, I don't have that experience, so I actually kind of need to slow down, not make assumptions, be curious, ask her what's going on, listen to the answers. Um, and yes, I mean, I do see the quality of conversations as the family has improved. But and as soon as they think I'm being worky, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
beehive, I get stung and I get kicked out. So this is not voodoo hoodoo stuff. I just want to be a good human with slightly better skills. That's it.
I really like that phrase. I'm going to quote you on that time and time again. Be yourself with a little bit more skill. I really really love that. All right, so just a couple more questions. What are you curious about right now, Philip, personally or professionally or whatever? This curiosity mindset is intriguing. I can tell that you embody it. What is it that you're curious about today?
I'm curious about lots of things, but I think the single thing that pulls it together is just be a little bit more conscious of what is happening in the system. I'm going to bring in another metaphor. It's not a B one.
Please.
But whenever you do something, it triggers antibodies, positive antibodies and negative ones. And some that you can see immediately and feel, and some that you can't see or feel. We talked earlier about crossing your arms. That's a single bodily symbol that sometimes means I'm closing down. Not always. Not always. So really, my request to leaders and just humans in the world is stop relying on old models and old beliefs. Just be a bit more open and curious about what's going on. What's going on in the system and what's driving it. And then I can work with it. Like the bees, if I know a little bit more about what's happening, I can work with it better, more effectively.
Love it. So, to close, what's one question that you wish more people would ask you? And then how would you answer that question? Yes, I'm asking you to do my job for me.
I'm going to be a bit cheeky and have some fun with this. I wish everyone would
Perfect.
see Philip. Two questions. One is, how do I get a hold of my own copy of Be Wise? Well, I'll tell you straight away. It's available on all bookshops. It's available on Amazon and all retailers. Be Wise, 12 Leadership Lessons from a Busy Hive. And the other thing that's important is the book is to raise money for a charity. All proceeds from the book go to a beautiful charity called beesfordevelopment.org. And beesfordevelopment.org is a charity that supports people in developing countries to learn bee skills to run sustainable businesses, to pay for their daughter's education, for example. They've got a huge program in Africa and in Asia. People in villages running bees to make honey, to sell, to pay for their kids' schooling. All the proceeds from the sales of the book go straight to the charity. And it makes it fun for me. It's lovely.
That's amazing. Philip, where else can people learn more about what you do?
Thank you, Josh. Social media. I'm learning all this stuff. Be Wise Book is the handle on Instagram and Facebook. There's a website, bewisebook.com, and you can learn about the book and the project. And then my own business, my consulting business, based in Europe, is hivelogic.com. and it's Hive Logic, HIVE Logic.com. You can find me there, or just, I believe Google can find me somehow as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely link all of that in the show notes as well. Philip, thank you so much for spending your valuable time across the pond from where I am, and really sharing that wisdom with our listeners. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know they will too. So thank you again.
Thank you, Josh. It's been a pleasure.